Taal volcano is located in Batangas, which is approximately 60 kilometers away from southern Metro Manila, and it is the smallest volcano in the world, which is around 243.2 square kilometers with a surface elevation of 311 meters, and it has a length and width of 25 and 18 kilometers. It is a volcano with a large caldera, and its main crater is basically like a lake within a lake and has 47 craters. The volcano island is identified as a permanent danger zone, which means that it is prohibited to reside in this area. And in a total number of 40 Philippine volcanoes, it is ranked as 12th place out of 24 active volcanoes in the Philippines. Slide po. The eruption history will be reported by Burse.
So eruption history. So the Philippines is located in the Ring of Fire. So the Ring of Fire is basically the most active fault line. So this means that it is very prone to unpredictable frequent volcanic eruptions and as well as earthquakes. So here are the list of volcano eruptions. As you can see, there are a lot. So the Taal volcano has erupted at least 34 times since 1972. The most notable eruptions here are the previous eruptions from 1977. That was the latest eruption, and then the biggest eruption was on the year 1754. This eruption lasted for 7 months. So, types of eruption. The current eruption is classified as phreatic and phreatomagmatic. Phreatic is a type of eruption which is a steam-driven explosion, similar to boil water. This is caused by the interaction of heated magma, lava, and other volcanic deposits on the ground. Phreatomagmatic, on the other hand, is a violent type of reaction that happens when magma directly interacts with water. So as you can see, there are 5 classifications: phreatomagmatic, phreatic, strombolian, Plinian, and unclassified. So phreatomagmatic has 11 cases, phreatic had 10, and strombolian had 2, Plinian only had 1, and unclassified there are 11 cases. So the strombolian activity consists of periodic mild blasts and the Plinian volcanic activity occurred only once and is the most destructive type of reaction.
Okay, for the detailed investigation, next po. So for the detailed investigation, in the course of eruption, which was erupted on the 12th day of January 2020, there were 212 volcanic earthquakes that were recorded within the day, and seismic activities mean an eruption may proceed as there is magma beneath the volcano. So on 8 a.m., the alert level is 1, which means that it is abnormal and hazardous but not imminent eruption. So 2:30 p.m., alert level 2, which means that the eruption is increasing and unrest. At 4 p.m., alert level 3 is reached, which means that it is magmatic unrest. It may include seismic swarms, changes in temperature, bubbling activity, and so on. While on 7:30 p.m., the hazardous eruption imminent, alert level 4, it means that hazardous eruption is very possible within the day. So, possible na ma-reach na yung alert level 5 at any given time. So, next slide po. So, in the course of eruption, in the 12th day of January 2020, when PHIVOLCS raised its danger to alert level 4, clouds of ash spewed over nearby towns, and that includes Metro Manila. So smoke blocked the sunlight the next day, which is January 13. and deadly mudslides swallowed nearby cities. So approximately 1 million people living near Manila or the 17-kilometer danger zone have been commanded by authorities to evacuate. So it was under alert level 4 for 2 weeks and was under alert level 3 for almost 3 weeks since January 26. Later on, Taal volcano was downgraded to alert level 2 on the Valentine's Day of February 14, 2020. So, share ko lang po, nung ano kasi, nung January 12, actually, ano siya eh, di ba, ang alert level 4 is, na-reach siya ng 7:30 p.m. So, on January 12, around 6 or 5 p.m., lumabas kami ng kapatid ko for a jogging, and dito kami sa nag-jog kami dito sa Marikina City, and we weren't aware much na yung eruption is ongoing na pala. So nagtaka kami nung nagja-jog kami, yung I mean, as in, pumipikit-pikit na kami kasi para kaming ewan, nag-jog pa rin kami, hindi namin alam na mga ashfall na pala yung tumatama sa amin. Tapos, nakasuot ako ng white at that time. So, nung pumasok ako ng grocery, nagtaka na lang ako na, uy, yung yung damit ko is gray na. Um, ayun, may mga nakasalubong din kami na gray na yung damit kasi nga, yun yung kasi yung cause nung ashfall na siya, actually patak-patak siya pero masakit siya sa mata tsaka talagang irritant. And at the same time, nung nagja-jog kami, nahirapan talaga kaming medyo mahirap huminga kasi maliliit siya, and yun, kapag nagsama-sama yun, delikado yun sa lungs. So yun, share ko lang po. That was memorable part dun this 2020 and funny at the same time. So next slide po.
Now for the aftermath. So these are the statistics for the affected, injured, and the death. So there was a total of 846,000 people affected, 96,061 of which had their electricity cut in 7 municipalities. 11,000 people lost their homes, and some of which were forced to live with their relatives. And then 18,000 people are evacuators in 118 temporary shelters, and sadly there were 39 people killed due to the eruption. So the economic effect of the eruption. So for the economic loss, about 3.2 billion worth of damage to crops, 1.6 billion worth of damage to the fishery sector, 527 million worth of damage to pineapple plantations, 360 million worth of damage to Kapeng Barako and Coffea liberica crops, 182 million worth of infrastructure damage, 20 million to livestock, 5.6 million to rice crops, and Philippine Stock Exchange was suspended. Now, for the economic gain, the only two factors that affected the economy was that there was an abrupt high demand for N95 masks, and bricks were manufactured about 5,000 daily.
So for the HIRAC implementation, there were 459,300 people within the 9-mile radius under alert level 4 were prone to risks and hazards at that time. They should also evacuate if alert level 5 is raised. Next slide. So there are hazards and risks during the eruption. The first one is the volcanic ash. A volcanic ash is a very small particulate matter. It is made up of tiny bits of volcanic hard glass from crushed crystals, minerals, and rocks. These are abrasive and mildly corrosive, and hindi siya natutunaw sa tubig. So smaller amounts nito can cause skin irritation, blindness, and breathing problem. And larger amounts cannot be easily filtered by nose and throat are considered more hazardous as these are readily inhaled into the respiratory system and is identified as more dangerous than Mount Pinatubo's volcanic ash. In terms of shape, kasi syempre, yung volcanic ash dito sa Taal eruption is sobrang maliliit siya, tapos hindi talaga siya perfectly sphere, and yung texture niya is very hard. Yung size niya mas maliit compared dun sa ashfall na produced by Mount Pinatubo's eruption. So for the sulfur dioxide, it's basically the sulfuric acid, which can cause acid rain. Acid rain has negative effects in the environment since it can harm trees, plant structures, pati yung animals, people's health, and low concentrations of sulfuric acid or sulfur dioxide can irritate skin, tissues, and mucous membrane of the eyes, nose, and throat. While yung large amount of concentration naman ng sulfur dioxide is very hazardous since it can cause lung inflammation such as asthma, bronchitis, and emphysema, which makes breathing difficult. So for the risk naman, of course, the most hazardous part there is the unpredictable volcanic activities. Because, it would be very critical if the alert level is raised to level 5. Since due to eruption, another risk also is the tsunami because these are waves produced by the vibrations caused by the possible fall of debris on the ongoing eruption. Another is the greenhouse gases are harmful gases produced by the eruption, which could make global warming worse. Next is the other pollutants. Okay, negative effects to surroundings, ganun din. So, impossible roads. So, resulting from heavy blankets of ash that spewed over Taal's neighboring towns could cause road accidents and traffic. So, kung matatandaan nyo, nung eruption, actually, may mga relatives din ako sa Laguna area na yung sasakyan nila punong-puno talaga ng ashfall and actually delikado yun sa engine and pwede rin na ano din kasi may corrosive property din kasi yung ashfall eh. So delikado. Actually it can cause accidents na. So for the excessive pile-ups of corrosive volcanic ash, itong ashfall na to, mas mabigat siya sa snow. Lalo na kapag nagpatong-patong sila. So dito naman sa Metro Manila, kapag sumobra yung accumulated number ng ashfall, pwede siyang pwedeng mag-cause siya ng collapse dun sa roofs natin. Lalo na kapag nag-mix siya ng water. At that time nga nung January 13 or January 12, nagkaroon ng konting ambon eh. Actually, yung dangerous yun kasi may kasamang acid rain yun. So, pwede niyang i-collapse yung roof kasi pwedeng karoon ng corrosion, mabigat din, and can also affect the water pipe system of any house. So, pwede niya i-block yung water pipe system. Dangerous talaga siya. So, next po. For the risk assessment, the category in the hazard consequence, under the brief explanation, can cause death or loss of a facility. Because, 39 people died at that time. So, the risk assessment rating is 4, while on the hazard probability, which is unpredictable eruption at any given time. So it is likely to occur immediately or within a short period of time when exposed to hazard. For the hazard exposure, there were 459,300 people affected, which is greater than 50 different persons regularly exposed to hazard. So kapag sinum up natin sila, or 4 times 3 is equal to 12, that is the risk rating total points. So in the risk assessment, rank number, it is number 1. So it means that it is critical. While for the risk correction priority rating, of course, emergency. Okay. Next slide po.
So
on the task force on mitigations, okay. Go ahead,
so for the task force on mitigations, these are the control, corrective, and preventive measures from hazards. So for the control measures, this is simply to reduce the impact of existing hazards. So the contingency emergency plan, these were intensified by the Batangas and provincial government of the Bureau of Fire Protection in the event of the eruption of Taal volcano, which could be activated and ready for implementation in any eventuality. So first is the Batangas PDRMC strengthened its disaster preparedness, emergency, and contingency plans. Second is a total of 14 local LGUs along the Taal volcano lakeshore and representatives from various local and national government agencies. They conducted planning workshops to craft steps for the 3 major eruption scenarios, which are the following. Base surge. Base surge is the emission of hot steam or gas, including volcanic debris along the Taal Lake area. Second is the lake oscillation. It is the increase in water level and series of waves in the lake water in the event of an eruption. And the third and last is the volcanic ballistic projectiles. Explosion of volcanic debris to the air and the ash fall or even the falling debris could affect the nearby towns. So the third plan is the establishment of the command and control center in order to supervise and manage the disaster response operation. So the fourth plan is the safer grounds. Safer grounds away from the permanent danger zones would be set up in each lakeshore town. And this is for the various emergency and contingency operations. So these are the establishments of the nearest evacuation sites, hospitals, and monitoring centers of the entire provincial road. So moreover, I think helicopter bases for airlift and evacuation operations was also set up in order to speed up the work by the council members and emergency responders. And the fifth plan is to communication links and emergency telecommunication systems were established to speed up communication and information to council member agencies and the public. And the last plan that the Batangas PDRMC established is that the plan to aim to spread awareness and readiness as well as preparedness in case of an eruption. So uh, they they were able to by using mass media, they share their knowledge on safety tips and guidelines, not only to the community of Batangas but also to the neighboring communities.
For the corrective measures, it aims to provide the warnings, safety procedures, and safety devices on the ongoing hazards by means of implementing the general hazard controls, such as by controls of administrative, engineering, and PPEs. Next slide. So, under FIVOX, Undersecretary Renato Solidum relayed the latest updates on Taal volcano and gave an account of FIVOX previews and ongoing monitoring activities, such as the possible worst-case scenario of ballistic projectiles, volcanic tsunamis, and base surge that can inflict major damage to areas within the 14-kilometer radius. So the island would remain strictly off-limits without FIVOX clearances. Next is the search and rescue retrieval, or the cluster and Philippine Coast Guard, alongside with PNP. They use their troops and vehicles to rescue the affected people at that time. Those includes animals surrounding the Taal Lake and also evacuated them immediately. Next is the DND, or the Department of National Defense. They had provided helicopters to evacuate the people. On the other hand, AFP naman, they sent 20 military vehicles and 120 personnel to help the affected residents. Next slide. So under the Bureau of Fire Protection, of course, they provided water tanker, fire truck, and conducted water rationing, flushing operations, and dredging of roads to clear off the ashes. While the DILG had directed the PNP to stop and prevent the individuals from returning to the island. Under the DPWH, of course, they led the leaning and clearing of ashfall and cropping of trees in road sections outside the danger zone. So ito naman, Department of Health, of course, they had the most significant help in the eruption that time. So they provided 9,190,000 pesos 412 worth of logistical assistance sa mga evacuees for the affected people. That includes medicine, face masks, water disinfectants, and hygiene kits. They also conducted site inspection in the evacuation areas and deployed personnel for rapid health assessment, emergency response teams, and human resources for health, for disease and nutrition services in the evacuation areas. So next slide. So under the Philippine Red Cross Act of 2010, or RA 172 of 2010, the government recognizes PRC as an independent, autonomous, non-governmental organization auxiliary to the authorities of the Republic of the Philippines. They collaborate with DOH NDRMC DSWD in the provincial, municipal, and barangay village disaster risk reduction and management councils. PRC's assessment teams had provided services and emergency items to people in temporary shelters, yun nga, evacuation areas. So, as you know, Richard Gordon is the chairman and CEO of Philippine Red Cross. So, he ordered the following tasks of PRC. The first task is the establishment of welfare desk in the evacuation areas. Second is the mobilization of 2 hot meals on wheels that includes 5 ambulances, 6x6 rescue truck, and 5 multipurpose vehicles were also put on standby. Third is the establishment of public health services, and the last one is the total number of 400 sets of PPEs that includes eye goggles, dust mask were being mobilized for personal operations in the affected area. So under the PMAT in coordination with World Health Organization, coordinated by DOH, ito yung binubuo ng health response personnel, which can be doctors, nurses, midwives, pharmacists, medtech, etc. So they set up tents and water supply, as well as generator beds, medicines, and equipment for the people who were affected on the eruption, especially in the evacuation centers. So under the mass media naman, in accordance to FIVOX, DOH, and other government private entities, they help circulate sufficient information and advisory for the affected community, which includes us, Metro Manila. So nagbigay sila ng reminders or precautionary measures and protection. Yun. So next slide po. So when it comes to protection of the workers, the Senate of the Philippines and the government encourage the private sectors to suspend work for the health and safety of their employees as the ashfall due to phreatic eruption continues to affect Metro Manila and other provinces near the volcano. So in the RA 11058 or the OSH law of 2018, in accordance with its implementing rules and regulation, it states that any worker can exercise their right to refuse to unsafe work, including unsafe working conditions, to natural calamities such as the eruption. Otherwise, they shall contact their safety officer to declare for a work stoppage. So, for the labor advisory, it was issued on January 13 by Secretary Silvestre Bello III. Sinabi niya na yung workers who refuse to work due to imminent danger resulting from eruption shall not be exposed or subject to any administrative sanction. So, dapat walang penalty yung workers na hindi papasok. So, otherwise, kapag dinayolate yun ng company, they will be penalized with 100,000 pesos per day of violation. So, ang laki, di ba? It also suggests that employers must provide extra incentives or benefits for employees who will be working during disasters. So the Office of the President had announced the suspension of government work and classes in Calabarzon, Central Luzon, Metro Manila. So for Proclamation 106, this declared by President Rodrigo Duterte a state of calamity in Calabarzon. So this is to mitigate the effects of disasters as well as stabilize the Appropriations Act of 2020 by the House of Representatives. They had reminded the public about the allocation of disaster fund. Yun nga, dahil nga nag-proclaim ng state of calamity si President, of course, may mga funds na lalabas dyan. So, 16 billion pesos para sa NDRMC fund, 7.5 billion pesos for the relief services, kasama na dyan yung rehabilitation and reconstruction of affected structures with help of course, DPWH, and 150 million pesos naman para sa agricultural assistance na ibibigay sa mga affected farmers. So, next po. So, yung DA, they confirmed the distribution of 30 million pesos worth of no-interest loans sa mga farmers. While the BPI or the Bureau of Plant of Industry, they had assessed damage on crops and aim to provide planting materials like coffee mother plants and cacao seedlings, so on and so forth, for replanting once everything is all cleared out. So the DSWD had provided at least 16 million pesos worth of distributed food and non-food items. Senate Bill 1228 aimed to push for the construction of permanent evacuation centers in every municipalities, and the House committees and urban planning experts are set to work on disaster resilient and sustainable plan. Next po.
So for the preventive measures, this aims to eliminate completely the destructive impacts of hazard's occurrence. So the preventive measures that we found was that President Rodrigo Duterte declared no man's island due to the hazardous eruption that could take place at any instant. So this is based on the recommendation of NDRMC and PhilVox. The order was urged by the DOST for a no human settlement policy in order to prevent further casualties in the event that Taal volcano erupts again. So no man's island simply means that nobody is allowed to go back until the area is proven safe, which means that returning to the island to save animals and salvage left belongings would be stopped by the PNP as instructed by the DILG. So because of this, the DILG proposed an implementing order in order to relocate thousands of residents to a safer place by means of fund allocation. Now, for the lapses that we found during the Taal volcano eruption is that first is the current alert system being used by the government is the NDRMC alert notification. So this system consists of a lot of flaws like delayed transmission of the messages, inaccuracy of detecting your location, and requires a device that can support the system. Second lapse is that the evacuation efforts conducted by the government and other rescue groups were generally unorganized and lacked coordination between the rescue units and the affected communities. So because of this, it stirred a lot of confusion on both parties, which resulted to stranded residents who were left to fend for themselves. Third is there was a lack of protective equipment like gas masks provided to the affected areas. So the residents around the area as well as the evacuees were seen to create their own mask from basic household materials like a tablecloth or a towel. So the lack of protective equipment being handed down by the government to the evacuees could greatly affect their health and safety. So the fourth lapse is that the evacuation centers used by the government were not able to accommodate the number of evacuees since the centers were crowded and some were even unhygienic. So the centers were also not placed in areas that can be easily accessed by every evacuee. So the fifth and last lapse that we found was that there was a lack of post-disaster safety programs and precautions implemented by the officials after the eruption. So some of the residents of the evacuated community opted to head back into the danger zones, which possessed great risk to their safety. Also, the entire community was left in a bad state where residents were in dismay and the establishments were destroyed. So because of these lapses, here are our recommendations. So for the first recommendation is that we should implement a real-time alert system that is capable of notifying and sending information to everyone within a proximity of the disaster area. So this information should be handed in the instant a disaster happens or a crucial information is needed to be passed down. So the system should be able to convey its messages to every single person without the need for an expensive device. And the second recommendation is that every government and emergency services responsible for handling such disasters should be trained properly. So they should be trained in order to be deployed at a moment's notice as quickly as possible and to execute their skill and expertise precisely to prevent any mistakes during a disaster. So for the third recommendation is that we should construct several resilient and adaptable evacuation centers in key areas which will be able to which is accessible to everyone. So these evacuation centers should be able to accommodate the entire community and provide a safe zone to the evacuees in every natural disaster possible. For the fourth recommendation, we should be able to provide a supplemental amount of protective equipment and rescue tools, enough for the emergency rescuers as well as their evacuees. So the rescue tools will greatly help in the rescue efforts of the rescuers, and the protective equipment will provide additional safety. And for our final recommendation is that the government should conduct post-disaster programs and activities that include the recovery of the entire community affected by the disaster and the restoration of damaged property and roads. So these programs should be able to help in boosting the morale of the community as well as restore the area to a safe living condition. So that ends our discussion. Thank you.
Okay, that was very well researched and well presented report. I don't think I can ask any more questions because you have already presented all the necessary data from the background after the assessment and also the athletes of that particular case.